Hi, Paul.
Howdy. I think I'm here now.
Okay.
I think you're here too.
Good. Who all's here by now?
Nick and Kent and Doris, and then Sarah Spicer. I don't think I've met Sarah Spicer.
Sarah is the climate reporter for the Wichita Eagle.
Good.
Oh.
Oh, wow. Cool.
Oh, we've got media.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Hi, I don't know if you can hear me. I'm trying to dial in, which I haven't done before.
Yes, you've been
Yeah,
successful.
we can hear you.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Yes, I'm here. I cover climate change and the environment. But I'm more here to meet, quote unquote, meet everyone and just, make connections and that sort of thing.
Thank you for coming.
Okay, yeah, thanks for joining.
Now watch out. We're going to try to get you to participate with the Kansas Green Party.
Hey, that'll be great.
Okay, well, it's 3:01, so I say we go ahead and get started. Now, I think we planned to start with introductions, but well, for the most part, we all know each other, but
I want to start with introductions.
Let's
go
my
name is Teresa Wilkie, Terry Wilkie, and I am this year, I was just elected vice chair of the Kansas Green Party. So we have two co-chairs. Kent Rao, I'd like to introduce you to. He is the other co-chair. And then Paul Crum is our treasurer. And Nick Blessing is the secretary and really administrator. Nick Blessing is an instrumental member of the Kansas Green Party. So we meet twice a month. Is that true? Or we have a bi-monthly meeting, yeah. And anyone is welcome to attend. We have a Zoom account. This is our annual convention, which is a meeting required by our bylaws for our status. And I just wanted to open it up by introducing myself and the others. And now then, Sarah, we just met you. Thank you for coming. And Doris, we never can hear you. Doris doesn't have a microphone usually. Is that true? She's not telling me in the chat. But so Doris is a person who comes to meetings regularly. Nick, do you know where Doris lives?
Doris, I believe, if I remember correctly, is in Fort Scott.
I was going to say Emporia, so yeah, okay, but I bet you're right. Mm-hmm. Okay. Oh, so Doris says that's true. A farm in Bourbon County. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Nice. Oh, right. I think, yeah, that's the county that Fort Scott is in, but cool.
Now, our first order of business today is we made an amendment to the Kansas Green Party bylaws, and we have circulated that, and we need to take a vote on the amendment, and I'm going to hand it over to Nick Blessing, who's going to...
Yeah, here, I'm just going to share my screen, actually, because I have... So, let's see. So we actually... So a little bit of background, and I know Doris has heard us talking about this, and of course it's primarily myself, Kent, Teresa, and Paul that really drafted this. Our current bylaws are silent as to how a presidential primary in the Green Party presidential primary process is supposed to be carried out. So we actually did have a primary of sorts last May, but it was very informal. We had a meeting, and we just had a vote among our membership, which was considerably smaller than it is now. Currently, we have 89 members in our party at this time, and I think it was more around 15. Here, just a moment. Sorry about that. I don't know if that's my heater. I don't know if it's pretty loud, so I just turned it off. Yeah, so we held a vote among our members. We had a virtual meeting like this one, where we made our votes available, and we also, everybody who was not present also had the option to vote online, to tell us ahead of time what their vote was. And we received some votes, and what ended up happening was everybody voted for the same candidate, who ultimately became the Green Party nominee, Howie Hawkins. And there was a very although Howie Hawkins was clearly in my opinion, was the strongest candidate, had the best fundraising, had the most serious strategy for attaining ballot access, which is really important for the Green Party. It was a contentious primary, and there were a lot of other candidates that were not happy. And there were other issues, or purported issues, with other state primaries. And so what happened was, we had our vote, and we made it public what the result of our vote was. And then later we got accused of rigging the primary for Howie Hawkins, which wasn't true. We held a vote, and everybody voted for him. Although, I mean, we didn't have very many members. And so, but what I decided after all of this was that we need to have something in our bylaws that provides some rules and guidelines for how it's supposed to be carried out, and provide for more transparency. And so in a future primary, in the next primary in 2024, if we vote to adopt this new amendment to our bylaws, which I'm sharing right here, candidates will be able to look at our website and find our bylaws and say, okay, I know what's supposed to happen here. So basically, there's a section that specifies that there's supposed to be notice, public notice, and notice to our membership that a primary will occur by a certain date. There's a section that says that our executive committee, which is referred to as the Kansas Green Party Council, which is myself, Kent, Teresa, and Paul at this time. There's a section providing for the time period for voting, a section that specifies requirements regarding recounts, eligibility of candidates, eligibility of voters. There's a section that specifies that some standards for how the primary should be impartial, and mainly specifically anybody that's actually working on a campaign is being paid by a campaign shouldn't be taking part in administering the election. I think that's pretty obvious. And a very basic section finally that's just that the executive committee decides how we choose our delegates, which would probably be a pretty basic democratic process here. Just a moment. Got one more person joining. Okay. Let's see. Janet Hansen, thank you for joining.
Oh, cool.
Would anyone like us to? We can read through the bylaws amendment if we like. That would take a considerable amount of time. If not, would anybody like to request that we read?
Janet, I want to bring you up to date. So we've gone through introductions. I'm Teresa Wilkie. The other co-chair is Kent Rao. Paul Crumb's the treasurer. Nick is the secretary. He was explaining our first agenda item, which is the amendment to the Kansas Green Party bylaws. This was a matter that came to our attention in the last National Green Party primary convention, where there was a challenge by one of the candidates that the Kansas Green Party had not taken the appropriate steps to nominate a candidate. And so we wanted to make sure to avoid any question of we were very small when we did it. Nick explained probably the most interesting fact. At the time that we took the vote, it was 15 members, and now we're 90 members. And so we do need a protocol for all the members every 4 years to vote on who the Kansas Green Party is supporting as a candidate for a presidential election on behalf of the National Green Party. So that's about where we are right now. Nick, sorry to interrupt you.
No, you're fine. And
I would suggest that excuse me. I
No,
would
go ahead.
suggest that if there's no objection, that we go ahead and vote on this bylaw change.
Okay, are there any objections? Okay. Let me see here. I'm going to.
My only question is, does there need to be a quorum, or is this really enough people to vote?
There isn't a rule. We don't have a rule about requiring a quorum. So
That's, yeah. You'd have to put it to a vote and send out the vote another way, because people hate meetings.
believe me, we know.
Right,
Yeah.
we did that, Janet. We handed the amendment out to everybody in our email
Yeah.
group, and we gave
Yeah.
them a date to vote by.
Yeah.
So the vote at this meeting will only be, and the deadline for that is today at 3 o'clock. So Nick, have we received votes from the email?
There have been no votes.
So, but
me check
we
my
have
spam
asked
folder.
a larger group. We've asked all the members. So I believe that satisfies your concern about
Yeah.
quorum.
Yeah.
Thank you for asking that. That's
Yeah. I think most of our members aren't that concerned about this. We actually discussed that a minute ago.
Yeah, and
before
I
you
can't
joined.
read anybody's mind. If I could, I would be doing
Right,
it rather
sure.
than attending political meetings on a Saturday afternoon. But
Yeah.
it's time to vote if everybody's ready.
Okay. Well, I think for everybody that's able to share with their screen, or I mean everybody who is appearing on screen, I suggest we just raise our hands. All who say yes.
Aye.
Okay. And Doris says that she's voting yes. And no. Noes? Seeing none? Okay, it passes.
Good.
Okay. Now we had, let's see here. So this will then be, I will add this to the bylaws page on our website. And from now on, this is going to be what guides us in future presidential primaries. All right, great. Let's see.
What's the next thing on our agenda?
Yeah, I'm taking a look at it. We have a couple videos that we wanted to share. Here, share screen again. And actually, we can have a little bit more open discussion real quick before we start this one. Does everybody have a good understanding or done much looking into what the Green Party generally represents, what its positions generally are? Janet, I see you on Twitter quite a bit.
Yeah,
I
that's true.
run the our Kansas Green Party Twitter account. So I get the feeling that you probably do have a good understanding of that.
I would say that it's not a great understanding, but I just
Okay.
know that I just feel like our politics as they're currently composed are not going to get us anywhere we want to go. And I believe that there needs to be some new breath in our politics. I mean, a lot of people are pretty busy declaring the Republican Party dead. I don't know that I agree with that. And then I don't know that there would be much left, there'd be that much distance between a Republican Party remnant and the Democratic Party as it's put together. And we just need some, what I've heard of Greens is attractive to me, but I am not that knowledgeable. Willing to learn though.
Here, let's I will here. Now I got to share my screen again. I think maybe this can spark a bit of discussion here.
Have you ever wondered, what is the Green Party? What are their views? In this video, no beliefs and policies that set them apart. The United States Green Party is the fourth largest political party. They generally hold a left-wing ideology on most issues. The Green Party bases their platform off of these four pillars. First is peace, which they reference the country's history of long wars and worldwide military presence as being immoral and unsustainable, and support dramatically cutting the military budget. Second, ecology, which they reference the high cost of climate change and a focus on renewable energy and not fossil fuels. Third, social justice, referencing the falling wages and increase in the cost of living, and demanding a safety net and livable wages for all. The last pillar being democracy, in which they demand public financing of elections, open debates, and more representative voting systems. With the groundwork laid out, let's look at their view on taxes. The Green Party supports that federal and state taxes must be strongly progressive. They view the current tax system as unjust, pointing to the loopholes, subsidies, and dodges for corporations and the super rich. They believe that most working people pay too much in taxes compared to the corporations, multimillionaires, and billionaires. A few of their propositions include cutting taxes for wage workers, including exempting people from federal and state income tax who make less than $50,000 for families and $25,000 for individuals. They also want to establish several systems of eco-taxes, including carbon taxes, taxing natural resource extraction, and eliminating tax subsidies for mining industries in an effort to help save the planet. Lastly, they support restoring estate tax and enacting a wealth tax of 0.5% per year on an individual's assets over $5 million. Now let's look at what viewpoints they have on the economy. The Green Party places emphasis on policies that focus on, as they put it, things which make life worth living. For example, health, relationships, communities, environment, and building peace and justice throughout the United States and the world. Their goal is to maximize quality of life with minimum consumption and an ability to distinguish between need and greed. They want to change the legal design of corporations so that it does not maximize profits at the expense of the environment, human rights, public health, workers, or the communities in which they operate. The Green Party supports a universal basic income which would go to every adult regardless of health, employment, or marital status. And they believe that the accumulation of individual wealth in the United States has reached grossly imbalanced proportions and that the tax incentives should exist for businesses that apply fair employee wage distribution standards. How would the Green Party improve the healthcare system? The Green Party supports single-payer universal healthcare and preventative care for all. They believe that healthcare is a right, not a privilege, and they point to the current healthcare system that lets tens of thousands of people die each year by excluding them from adequate care. But under a universal healthcare system, the administrative waste of private insurance corporations would be redirected to patient care. They believe that a universal healthcare system would be most cost efficient overall and would give people greater peace of mind knowing that they have the healthcare that they need. In addition, the Green Party supports all women's rights to choice and that safe legal abortion procedures should be available on demand and be included in all health insurances. Lastly, they support comprehensive, humane, and competent care of all people with HIV and AIDS. Next, what's their stance on civil rights? The Green Party believes that the foundation of any democratic society is the guarantee that each member of society has equal rights and that the respect for constitutionally protected rights is the best defense against discrimination and abuse of power. They support full and legal political equality for all, regardless of sex, gender, and sexual orientation. The Green Party continues their efforts to secure more equality for women by supporting equal representation in the government and in the workforce, as well as full rights over their health choices. The Green Party focuses on policies that support making amends for the wrongdoings from the past for people of African descent, Native Americans, as well as Native Hawaiians. How does the Green Party view education? Let's take a look. The Green Party is strongly opposed to the dissolution of public schools and the privatization of education. They believe that the best educational experience is through a democratically organized system of students, parents, communities, and teachers. They believe that higher investment in education should be one of the highest priorities because the education system is underfunded, resulting in teachers being overworked, underpaid, and lacking key materials. The Green Party believes that our schools should turn our children into servile students, employees, consumers, or citizens. They advocate ending all standardized testing and instead redirect the millions of funds allocated toward prep, materials, and testing support to music, arts, sciences, and languages, and treat them as mandatory academic subjects. Last but not least, what unique views does the Green Party have on the environment? Greens want to stop runaway climate change by reducing greenhouse gas emissions at least 95% by 2050 over 1990 levels. They believe that climate change is the gravest environmental, social, and economic peril that humanity has ever met. They point to the evidence of vanishing polar ice, melting glaciers, growing deserts, stronger storms, rising oceans, less biodiversity, deepening droughts, as well as more disease and worldwide hunger. The Green Party supports policies to curb climate change by reducing greenhouse gas emissions and actively removing greenhouse gases from the atmosphere. They believe that we must enact an emergency Green New Deal to turn the tide on climate change, revive the economy, and make wars for oil obsolete. They believe in transitioning to 100% clean, renewable energy by 2030, and that we must reduce our use of private vehicles and build an efficient, low-cost public transportation system that is convenient to use. Lastly, they support a national zero waste policy, which states that the less that we consume and throw away, the less we will need to produce and replace. Did you
All right. Now, I thought that was a pretty good, fairly objective summary of the Green Party's views. So thanks, Teresa. Thanks for finding that video. Does
I found
anybody?
that video by looking at YouTube, and there are other videos that give a historical perspective on the Green Party, which will show, well, I don't know that we're going to show them all that I found, but it's good to look at. And then also let's reference the National Green Party site, which is gp.us, isn't that correct?
.org. gp.org.
gp.org.
Yeah, you're
And
right.
they outline the platform of the National Green Party at that website. And our webpage has got our platform, the Kansas Green Party. And it's all open to discussion.
Yeah, so most of those things that video that video talks about, that is why I'm part of the Green Party. And I feel like it was, for me, it was really after the 2016 campaign, that's when I really decided to get involved. Because I was a big Bernie Sanders supporter during the Democratic primaries. And then, you know, we all know how that ended in June or so of 2016. And that's when I started looking into that, because I knew that the Green Party existed. I didn't know that much about it, but I'd heard of Ralph Nader before, and you know, all that. So I started looking into Jill Stein and the Green Party, and I decided to vote for Jill Stein. And then, you know, the whole 2016 general election itself, and it seemed like Hillary Clinton lost, and it was like, you know, how was she able to even lose? And I was like, well, I think I just kind of had it. And that's when I started getting involved with this. Let's see. I disagree with promoting nuclear. I don't want a 1.5 million half. Did it talk about nuclear energy in that?
They talked about
It wasn't,
zero energy, and I don't recall that they said reduce coal consumption. They said clean energy, I'm sure. And I agree with you, Doris.
Yeah, I also agree.
I think we all agree on that.
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't remember them saying anything about that, but I don't know, maybe I missed it.
No, they didn't in this one.
Kent, what do you think about nuclear energy?
Well, my arrest record attests to what I think about nuclear energy. Prior to 3 Mile Island, prior to Chernobyl, and certainly what happened in Japan, the Fukushima, I was arrested on the railroad tracks in Burlington, Kansas, with 80 other people. That the flatbed car on the rail car was bringing the GE Mark II nuclear reactor to Kansas. And we don't understand, I don't think people understand today how nuclear power works and the carbon that's involved in that fuel cycle, the uranium fuel cycle, and not to mention the decommissioning of a nuclear power plant. It's horrific, much more carbon than you would ever conceive of using wind and solar and other means of electricity production. It was bizarre. And then we learned about 3 Mile Island and so on. So that's kind of, it's sad that it had to be that way. We had to have these disasters to teach us what nuclear power really is.
Yeah, you know, because I feel like it's not something, of course, I watched that Chernobyl mini series that was on recently. That was very good. But it's not, nuclear energy isn't something that I've really looked into that much, but I've generally been, you know, against or at least suspicious of it. But you know, I think people like to point to nuclear energy every once in a while as like it's I don't know, it's a compromise, or it's a I'm not quite sure how to phrase it, but it seems to get framed that way. sometimes, like that it's still preferable to coal or maybe fracking, or I don't know. It's a lesser evil, apparently.
So Paul knows my husband, and my husband for a long time was interested in nuclear as an option. And I didn't know that, I'm same boat, didn't know that much about it. But to me, when you come back to nuclear waste, I'm like, oh, this is a deal breaker. I mean, once you understand that, it's like, really? Nobody saw this as a fatal flaw, and we don't have good solutions for it. We just have, and the contamination of Japan, that is something you never hear anybody talk about.
Yeah, you're right.
Well, of course, I posted it in Eco Radio KC just last Monday, and everyone's welcome to listen to our little short news update. And so the status of Fukushima is that they have found the parts of nuclear contamination in the ocean waters is well above tolerance. And that's like last week's news. Okay. So I posted in the chat beyondnuclear.org. And this young man, Kevin Camps, he was in Lawrence, he was in Kansas City, he was heading west, and it's been, I'm sure it's going on 2 years ago now, but his website would be very up to date, this Beyond Nuclear. So the plan is all this nuclear waste is just being kept in all the nuclear power plants. And we have one in Kansas, and it's in Burlington, Kansas. And so the plan is to send semi trucks and trains and load this nuclear waste, and they're trying to put it in New Mexico. And the people in New Mexico are saying, no, we do not want it. They want to bury it. And so it is an ongoing controversial issue. The problem with nuclear energy, yes, it's true, splitting atoms creates electricity, but it also creates waste, and we don't have any place to put the waste. We don't have any good place. It doesn't create energy anymore. Now it's just contaminated waste. And so it's a problem. Mm-hmm.
Look, it's Kitty.
Yeah, nuclear energy only creates heat to boil water to run it to steam turbine. And you do that with the control rods that push in and out of a reactor. And the accidents just that have been horrific. Not just the ones we aforementioned, but the personnel in the early ones, where the fuel rods have blown out and skewered a worker onto the ceiling of the reactor building. That was in Utah, I think, Pocatello, Utah. So it's a dirty industry. It's hard. They try very hard. They do very well. The employees and the workers are doing a stellar job of containing it, but it must go because, and there's generations worth of jobs just cleaning up that mess, just like there is in the oil and gas industry. Lots of jobs cleaning up the mess.
Doris says the mayor of Zion, Illinois, says his town is a waste dump. My father helped build that plant. It has been shut down for years. The coal plant he helped build 50 years prior is still in operation, burning used tires, coal, and gas.
to spin turbines. That's why they burn it, is because the steam spins turbines. Yeah, that's the way it works.
All right. Well, let's see here. I think Paul and I will now discuss just give an update on where we're at with ballot access. So Right now, the basic idea is a three-prong strategy, that we are going to be filing a lawsuit. We are pursuing legislation in the Kansas legislature, and we will be holding a petition signature drive. In order to the law in Kansas is that in order for a new political party to have ballot access, which is by having official recognition from the state, you have to collect a number of signatures from registered voters in the state, equal to 2% of the total votes that were cast in the last governor election. And that number is about 21,000. So, and then you have 180 days to do so. So we have a lawsuit, which we do have, we have gotten two attorneys, one who's local in Kansas and one who is from Oklahoma, who specializes in ballot access issues and has done ballot access cases in Kansas before. That lawsuit is to cut the number of required signatures in half, because there is United States Supreme Court case law that the current statute violates. That case is a case that dealt with a law in Ohio, and I think it was probably back in the 60s. I don't have it in front of me right now. But basically what it was that the number of signatures, the percentage required to get on the ballot, was higher than the percentage of votes that you have to get to maintain ballot status. And the Supreme Court said that that's an equal protection violation because it discriminates between new and old parties, established and not yet established parties. So, and that's exactly what the Kansas statute is, because you only have to have 1% of the vote from a statewide candidate in order to maintain ballot access. So that's part of it. Our bill, which we are working on getting introduced in the Kansas legislature, we're hoping to have it introduced in both the House and the Senate next week. The bill does the same thing, reduces the signature requirement to 1%, and also doubles the amount of time to collect the signatures. So if we can get those done, that's a game changer for us. Right, and then, but no matter what, we will be collecting signatures, and what we decided months ago was that will begin on April 22nd, which is Earth Day. And let's see, so I actually just visited the Capitol on Thursday. I actually went there in person. And I brought the bill that we had last session. And I brought it to my state senator, Marcy Francisco, to have it drafted as a bill in the Senate. And Paul has been in touch with his representative to do the same thing in the House. So we should have progress on that soon. And on that front, basically what we're going to need to do, once we get them introduced, we're going to need as many people as possible to contact their own representatives and senators. And I would suggest doing 3 things. I would suggest sending an email, and you go on kslegislature.org. Most are most representatives and senators have two emails available. One is their actual Kansas legislature email, and the other one is like usually like their campaign email or another like personal email. I would suggest emailing them on both of those emails. I would suggest writing an actual letter and having it mailed to the Capitol, and then also calling their office. So, and I think we're going to make a kind of form letter, or just like bullet points, and probably one of them will be that the current law is violates the Equal Protection Clause. And yeah, so we're
Nick,
gonna
if I
need.
can ask you, what was it like to go to Marcy Francisco's office? I know Stephen Johnson, Paul, I know that your representative is amenable to ballot access for the Green Party, but what was Marcy Francisco's take on it?
I mean, I only explained it to her pretty quickly, but I mean, she was perfectly happy to at least get the bill drafted for me. I didn't discuss with her, actually supporting it, but I know her. I've been an intern for her. I've like she and I have actually have a personal relationship. Um, I was her intern in the legislature last session, and I was an intern for her on her state treasurer campaign in 2018.
Well, I wanted to add to the group, this was in front of the elections committee last year. And Paul, you and I spoke to the elections committee. They had a hearing and it died in committee. It's the same ballot access bill, reducing the number of signatures and extending the time to obtain those signatures so that the Kansas Green Party can be, and any other party, any other third party can be a recognized political party. And so it's interesting, but don't we have a video, Nick? If there's no, we want to hear everyone's discussion, but we have a video about third party politics and whether that's a controversy or anything to be.
Sure, yeah, we're going to show that. Let me see. So, but I just to wrap that up, I'll be sending out some stuff by email, and we're going to be wanting all of our members, or as many as possible, as many as who will do it, to contact their representatives, and also contact the governor, I think, as well. On the lawsuit, we have at least I think maybe about six or seven of our members have volunteered to be potential plaintiffs in the lawsuit. So our main attorney, whose name is Jim Linger, he wanted us to get people who are supporters of the Kansas Green Party. He wanted me to get multiple people, and that he would probably settle on 4 to 6 to be the plaintiffs in the lawsuit. I myself, Teresa, and Paul are among the people that have volunteered to do that, and there are a number of others. I don't have the list in front of me, But is anybody else willing to do that, to be a potential plaintiff?
I think to get people up for that, you just have to tell them what's involved. And, you know, for example, right now, right this minute, I'm registered Democratic.
That's okay.
And although at times I've been registered Republican because otherwise you don't really get to do much in Kansas. And so, yeah, so I'm kind of like a calico cat. I would be glad to go independent. But the other question I had is, and not that I'm trying to, are the libertarians already recognized?
Yeah.
Okay, so they've done this. They did it the hard way.
Yeah, I think
did it I'm
You
sorry, they
muted.
did it the hard way with greater funding. So you can pay people to obtain signatures on ballot access petitions. And
Also, the number required was probably much lower when they attained ballot access.
I don't know about that, but I do know
I'm
that
almost 100% positive it was lower, because the number of people who vote in each election, it increases each time. Before, when the number was based off of the 2014 gubernatorial election instead of the 2018 gubernatorial election, the number was more like 18,000, not 21,000. It increases. It will increase again after the 2022 one.
I think the point is, even if we get a reduction in the number of signatures and an extension in the time, ballot access is a petitioning exercise. And we'll have to do it, and we can do it. We got signatures for Jill Stein. She was put on the ballot as an independent, which, pardon my faulty memory, that took fewer than 10,000. And that's
5,000.
Say it again.
5,000.
Only 5,000. I think we had 8,000. That's why I'm remembering that number. And at the end, the Stein campaign did pay petitioners at the very end to get those in, but it took a whole 180 days. I mean, and now in times of COVID, and so our lawsuit talks about very good issues like freedom of the people and how do you obtain this impossible number of signatures during a time of COVID. I mean, it's so anyway, we're optimistic.
Just as background too, this bill has been introduced ever since 1915 at least. I've been following up on that ever since then. And last year was the first time that we actually got it before the committee and were able to speak to the committee. So that's movement along that direction. And if we can keep it moving now more, why we maybe, it was especially with the leverage of the court
The
case.
lawsuit.
Yeah, lawsuit. We may be able to get it done this year.
Anyways, is there any more questions on this? I think that pretty much is.
Just that if you are going to try to recruit other people to be part of the lawsuit, you're just going to need to let them know what it's going to entail.
Well, it may entail, and what we're asking at this point, because we don't know everybody who volunteers, we don't know that they're actually going to be one of the plaintiffs, because we need to give our attorney multiple options. So signing up as a potential plaintiff doesn't mean that you're going to actually be on the lawsuit. And it would be an ongoing discussion, but it mainly means that you would have to that you would have to testify, you would have to probably be deposed, you'd probably have to attend some hearings. And I assume at this point that a lot of those are going to be virtual. I don't have confirmation on that, but yeah. And I'll probably have to send out another email message because I'd send out something before, and we got some responses. We got about 5 or 6 people that were willing to do it. But I'm just trying to get our attorneys some more options, basically.
Did he think it was useful to have people? I mean, I kind of expect that most people that are interested in the Green Party are in central Kansas to eastern Kansas. But did he think it was, and that could be a false assumption. And so, but did he think it was advantageous to have the whole state represented?
You know, I don't remember him. I'm gonna have to talk. I can ask him. I think he did definitely say that like a diverse set of plaintiffs is advantageous. And actually, we do have one of the persons who has signed up is someone who is in the absolute northwestern corner of the state.
Oh, very good.
So yeah, and I think we do have a pretty good, I mean, of course, Teresa and I are both in Lawrence. Paul is in central Kansas. Paul's in Ellsworth County. Yeah, you know. One person who is a maybe is in Augusta. So another person who signed up is in Carbondale, which is just south of Topeka. So geographically, we already do have a pretty diverse set, but just more options, you know. I mean, but then again, yeah. Well, let's see here. Should we move on to our next item? Because this is, let's see here. Because one of the big issues that really does stand in our way is just the way that elections are administered, the way that the systems that we have for voting, the first past the post form of elections is it's actually one of the least representative forms of democracy in the world. And we've got, Teresa found another video, which is from Vox, which discusses other alternative forms of voting. Let's see.
The American system really, in a lot of ways, discourages participation.
Is that loud enough?
Elections for Congress in the United States are based on a plurality winners system where you live in one district, candidates from 2 or more parties go run in that district, and then whoever gets the most votes wins. Right now, many of our maps are incredibly disproportional. And in a state like North Carolina, Democrats got 47% of the vote, but Republicans have over 2/3 of the seats. Meanwhile, most of us end up living in congressional districts that aren't competitive, where often the opposition party doesn't run a candidate at all. We end up focusing on a handful of swing seats that happen to be narrowly balanced. There's a very strong incentive to vote for one of the 2 major parties, because people don't want to waste their vote by supporting a third party with no chance of winning. When you have 330 million people and 2 parties trying to represent them, lots of people inevitably are going to feel left out. You have incredible levels now in the United States of dissatisfaction with the political parties. Americans should think more seriously about switching from our current electoral system to one of any number of more proportional alternatives that could solve a lot of problems that exist in American voting today. In a partyless system, it's very simple. Everybody in the state, they would go to the voting booth and they would vote for a party that they like best. And then at the end, we would see how many votes did each party get. And if you got 25 or 30 or 40% of the vote, that's how many seats you would get. And then the seats would be filled by just sort of running down a list that party leaders had made for themselves. Israel, Finland, Norway, Sweden, Germany, and New Zealand all use variations on this system. And as a result, voters have lots of choices when it comes to finding a party that represents their interests. And voter turnout in these countries is much higher than in the United States. Another popular system is called an alternative vote system. You show up and you have to rank a whole bunch of candidates in order of preference. A constituency will elect a whole bunch of different members as individuals, but it's still going to work out that if 40% of people were for Democrats, they'll end up with 40% of the seats. This is how legislators get elected in Australia and Ireland. And there too, you see lots of political parties. In the American system, a loss is a loss. So Republicans don't really put resources into House races in Massachusetts, and Democrats pretty much ignore a place like Alabama. But in a proportional system, both parties would need to fight everywhere. Then they would need to try to engage citizens everywhere. There's no constitutional requirement in the United States that everybody use this district-based system. Most states could adopt elements of a proportional system if they wanted to. Sure, the connection between a specific place and a specific legislator would weaken a bit, but it would also solve the problems of gerrymandered districts and break the two-party hold in our political system. You would get a wider range of views represented, you would get a wider range of talents involved in the system, and you would have more people feeling that they're represented.
Okay.
Also, the Missouri Green Party just in the last 2 weeks put a webinar out on third-party politics. The Vox piece is 2017. And the Green Party, the National Green Party has been active for many, many years. But it does, when you get bad candidates running for office, it is frightening to support a third-party candidate where there is a fear that it will split the ticket and that the bad guy will win. And so you guys are looking at somebody, I was very active in the petitioning that put Jill Stein's name on the 2016 presidential ballot. And I spent some sleepless nights worrying about, once it became clear that Trump was going to be a candidate, that by putting Stein on the ballot, that meant Trump would win. The good news is, in a state like Kansas, if you had taken all the votes that Jill Stein got in Kansas, which was it was one of her stronger states because Kansas is progressive, if you had taken those and given it to the Democratic candidate, Trump would have still won. He won by an overwhelming majority of votes. The third party didn't have any effect, really, on the fact that his electoral votes in Kansas made him the Republican primary candidate. So, and the president of the United States. So at this time, the Green Party is so small, there isn't a big fear of splitting the ticket. And I see the positives that are achieved by giving people more voting options and to release them from feeling like it's a football game. It's us, it's them, it's us, it's them, like politics is warfare. The whole moving away from that to, well, politics is something that you think about and consider and give reasoned thought. I see that as a real advantage to adding more parties to our political system.
Absolutely. I mean, um, I think that there's a real benefit just in having more political views that are prominent and that are, widely discussed in the media. You can just imagine a whole other issue is the presidential debates, which is another thing that Jill Stein certainly talked about quite a bit. They apparently, this is so hard to even believe, but apparently in 2012, when Jill Stein and I think her vice presidential running mate was Sherry Honkala, but they went to the place where the debate was to occur, and they got basically taken to a black site and were like held in a room it sounds kind of crazy, but they weren't permitted to even be there, much less actually be on the stage and participating in just a political debate. So something like ranked choice voting, though, it eliminates the strategic, the foregone conclusion that people vote strategically because they think that, well, it's one of these two candidates is going to win because of the first past the post system. And actually, now I hadn't checked on this, and this really just reminded me of it, but there was a Republican lawmaker in Kansas was interested in introducing a ranked choice voting bill in the legislature this session. And I don't know that that has actually been introduced. I'm actually looking at the website now, and I don't think. No, I'm not seeing it. I think it was Adam Smith. So I don't know. We might be seeing that. I'm not sure.
It's not uncommon in social media to be told that since I voted for Jill Stein, I helped elect Donald Trump. I mean, and I'm like, no, that's really a math problem. I didn't,
There's the math problem. Yeah, like how Teresa just said, it's literally. And there were people, I remember in 2016, there were people that are literally saying that, no, actually, if you gave all the Jill Stein votes to Hillary Clinton, Hillary Clinton would have won Kansas. It's like, no, you're not thinking rationally. But even the assumption that the Green votes go to the Democrat is a flawed assumption. Because they polled, I think, in Michigan, and Michigan was one of the ones where it was actually very close. I think that was where it was the closest, actually. I think maybe it was only like 16,000 votes or something like that. But they polled the voters who voted for Jill Stein, and too many of them said that they would either vote for Trump or they would vote for, or much more of them said that they wouldn't vote for anyone if Jill Stein hadn't been an option. So it is, in my mind, it is a completely debunked assumption, but there's still this chilling effect from the plurality winner election system.
The more you would build the Green Party, the bigger of a problem it would become. Yeah.
Well, they better just make ranked choice voting then, and then that would solve it.
Yeah. And so do we feel like this other voting issue has to be tackled before we talk about ranked choice or not particularly?
You mean
The ballot
ballot
access.
access? I
Mhm.
think ballot access is what we want first because actually the other thing is in Kansas well actually all over the country there are a lot of seats that go uncontested. I counted it once in Kansas. I think it's maybe in 2018 it was something like 30 of the House of Representatives seats were uncontested. I can't remember exactly. I counted it out like 2 years ago, right after
That sounds right.
yeah.
Oh, that sounds right.
Yeah.
And the ranked choice, Janet, we would have help from the Libertarians and potentially the Heritage Party. That's the other.
Oh, and yeah, they're in favor of it. I know they're the Libertarians Secretary of State candidate in 2018. He was partly campaigning on ranked choice voting. He was supporting it in his campaign. I forget what his name was. But yeah, that's definitely something that I want us to pursue. The only problem is we can only do so much. And I feel like getting ballot access for us would be huge for expanding our membership. So I feel like that is a priority although ranked choice voting is also incredibly important. So yeah.
Do keep us updated on what if somebody is actually bringing that legislation up, because if all we have to do is support somebody else, it's not like carrying the ball.
Right. Well, I'm actually a little bit disappointed now because I'm looking at the elections committee's page right now, because it seemed like he submitted a request for an opinion from the AG's office, sometime last year. So it made it sound like he was and I emailed with him once and he made it sound like he was pretty serious about it, but I think if he was actually serious about it, he would have pre-filed it, but
So I want to go ahead, unless anybody has anything they'd like to say about the three parties and ballot access and ranked choice voting. Can we move forward to discussion on t-shirts?
Yeah. Kent, where are we at with those?
Well, my daughters, can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
My daughters are printing them up this weekend because they're quarantined. So they're kind of a captive audience in that. But yeah, this part right here is going to be a darker green. And then I think it was Paul wanted to do an alternating sunflower burst, yellow, green. Was that right?
What I was thinking of was just to make that dark green yellow instead, and then the ring of little their stamens or something, have them green, and then have the petals yellow.
Okay.
And that's just an alternative coloring scheme that you might consider.
Okay.
You could also experiment doing it multiple ways, because I think it looks good like this too. But yeah, I could experiment around with it. I don't know, or maybe it's easier to just do it one way. I don't know.
I'll leave it to them and see how they go. It's they've just got a small machine, but they seem to enjoy it, and got it set up in their garage so they can print a bunch. And like I say, they have these brand new for free And then we can also do hemp if you want t-shirts, which I like. And I wish it were Kansas hemp, but someday soon we may be able to do that. I'm looking for the first automobile or parts for automobiles, buses, building materials, and so forth to come from Kansas hemp. And to do that, we need energy. We need clean energy, because you cannot run a processing plant decorticating, making the hurd, and elevating that material, that raw material, into what it needs to be without abundant, low-cost energy. There's some good videos on this. It's from Eastern Europe, the best processing plant I've ever seen for hemp. They never stopped growing hemp in those regions, but they process it from the field. It shows right into the various machinery that it goes into. It makes a really nice laminate material, not to mention bioresins that adhere that material together to make all sorts of things. And then the carbon footprint, of course, it's locked up. That carbon is locked up in those items. And it'll give Kansas a great economic boom to local manufacturing, neighborhood enterprises, various non-centralized schemes, or you can be a supplier of larger systems and items that are sold. Lotus Car Company of England has already made one. There's a car, the Kestrel, made in Canada, that's made of carbon fiber hemp, these kinds of things. And I think that would be a good market draw for people to say, oh yeah, this is made in Kansas. We'll prefer this brand over another, and on and on. So.
Well, I agree with you 100%. As a person, I'm an old hippie. And so when we were young, we didn't want to wear polyesters because they weren't natural fibers, preferring cottons, you know, your blue jeans and stuff. And so now, as an old hippie, and I'm aware that polyesters are all petroleum products, and the heck, it's not sustainable to make our clothes out of plastic. It's not good for us. We know the problems of overuse of plastics. To have a hemp fabric, which is that shirt. Now, the shirt you have on, is that hemp?
No, that's polyester. I can show you. We do have them made out of hemp. We have some hemp items. But I thought I'd wear this today, but I'm just saying that it could be made of hemp.
Yeah, I would like to do that. There's a lot of movement, legislative movement with Kansas hemp in the State House.
And part of the Green Party platform will be to use those items that can be associated with low carbon and the life cycle. What do you do when it wears out? Well, you just throw it away? No, you can actually do various things with this, and it does not have a polluting 5,000 year plus signature.
At worst, you can compost it.
Yeah. Well, and on that vein too, we just bought some material from natural grocers, some vegetables, and they put it in bags that you would associate. Oh, here's another plastic bag. Well, no, this is a compostable, not municipal compostable, but backyard compostable. They're very lightweight, green in color, and I think they're just made out of cornstarch. Add water, and it does probably break up, I think, within 6 months. We have yet to try it, but that's the first major store I have seen, natural grocers, to implement those bags. So, and our paper, our stationery too, we should make it's pretty expensive, but at least some documents could be printed on hemp, probably a hemp cellulose combination. But it's out there. It's, we have these tools, we have these products, and that's what we should promote and assign a carbon debt to it, or a minus debt. It's carbon negative in some ways because it does lock up the growing of hemp plants and so forth, but you also have the harvesting too. And I noticed in Nebraska, they are making an electric agricultural tractor that you can do tilling with and other farm duties. I think it's called Built Right or Built Tough, and it is a pretty good product. I think they need to use lithium-ion batteries. I think it's Hilton, Nebraska, where that's being made. I saw that at the farm show in Topeka, I think it was, a few years back. It's the old Model G, Alice Chalmers design. And on that vein too, there are a number of electrified pull type farm machinery. And what's the advantage of that? Well, the power takeoffs on a lot of tractors wear down those motors. Those diesel engines wear out. There's a lot of heat involved. It takes a lot of fuel. And if you have a plug-in appliance like a swather, baler, hay tillage, and hay forage equipment, then you can eliminate that part. You plug it in just like you do a car, an EV. When the wind is blowing, sun is shining, and you're generating on farm, plug it in and charge up those batteries and then pull it through a field. And you can pull it with something without a power takeoff. So these engineering models are being implemented right now.
Well, yeah, if we could get hemp shirts, that would definitely be cool. We only had cotton shirts, in which I'm wearing one of them right now. We've got one more of these left. It's a medium. This is a small. But yeah.
Yeah, we can get the hemp shirts in all sizes, and I like it. It's good material. It feels good.
Well, let's see. We had this. Let's see. This PowerPoint presentation. Do we want to move on to that?
Yeah, you ready for that?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll click on share screen here, and I need to get into my PowerPoint. And this is something I've put together for and modified for this organization. Yeah, it kind of exemplifies what we've gone through and been doing in the past 10 years with social media and the almost Hitlerian type of information that we've been given as being normalized. How's this happen? Well, here's just modified this movie poster on learn what you can do to protect your family by being eaten alive. People have been eaten alive without knowing it. The disinformation from cyber mobs, bots and troughs and clickjacking, corporate lies and profit above all has taken us where we've come now. And it's very stark remembrance when we saw the storming of the Capitol. But here I'm going to present just a few things that prairie restoration that's germane to Kansas, and a green industry that we have. And I'll be saying some things in Chickasaw language too. For what happened last Wednesday with the storming of the Capitol, ho hestami atok nabhili chokta lokalikashaka kopa. They have taken over the houses of government. And ho inyaka pani chi hayo walchi patpo ahacha faniha. They have interrupted clean electricity and power for oil. So I'm talking about adaptation, and I want to, this is kind of germane to the whole thing, is our fossil ancestors and all other species kingdoms have reached a marvelous and mysterious evolutionary transformation. Within an eye blink of time, over a 4 million year history, our species have now brought ourselves to the brink of extinction, along with the 250 million year species of whom we share the planet. Does an adaptive process which modern hominids can adapt? Well, this presentation does explore methodologies in which we as Homo sapiens can choose to create a sustainable presence for ourselves and every other living being on the planet. And here's a fellow saying, amid the horrifying prospect of an apocalypse, there is an immense amount of profit to be gained. And here's where I warn people sometimes not to bring their children, because this seems rather hopeless. We all talk about this, the carbon dioxide, the concentrations of CO2 in the atmosphere and how we've got to bring it down. Well, here's also what's happening because of heating of the surface of the planet due to the greenhouse effect. The Arctic seas is somewhat of a shallow sea. And what happens is that the warmer oceans, that are the heating oceans, push in to this Arctic sea and causes the loss of sea ice. But not just that. We're seeing that the churning of the when storms occur and there's lots of wind, this churns up a lot of the seabeds, free gas, and the subsea methane hydrates, and so forth. The lakes of bubbling methane that are coming up. And that churning, that's a mechanical force. Churning up the seabeds here is releasing amounts of methane. And in 2010, it was carbon dioxide. But now in 2020, we're seeing a greater amount of methane being released, even though this past year with the pandemic, we used about 8% less carbon, we emitted 8% less carbon dioxide. And again, this is just forestry and land use, but fossil fuel use is the most productive source of carbon dioxide. And then there's some nitrous oxides. And I've been hearing some more about sulfur hexafluoride, which is used in the in manufacturing of shoe soles too. And here's what it looks like up front. Sorry, this is not a very good slide, but here's the transport through the ecomia of the methane, oxygen in, methane out, and the CO2 is locked up. But then the methane starts to bubble out with the churning, like I say, of the seas, because there's no ice here. There's almost a blue water event coming on during the summers. And that allows for currents to form and churning of the sea, stirring up these beds of hydrates that contain methane. And 3 kinds of warming in the Arctic. The albedo change, which is just the temperatures and the dynamics and the movement of glaciers, plus the sea ice loss, and the Arctic methane stores become weakened. These methane releases, again, it's a positive feedback loop, although there's no positiveness about this. It's a bad thing. And runaway global warming. And then emissions, also the soot coming off that's settling on the surface of the snow does attract the sunlight. So it all has a loop going through it. And this is what it looks like here on the left. You have the seawater and the depth and the gas-bearing sediments being liberated into the atmosphere. And you can see that the hydrate stability zone becomes disrupted, and these metastable hydrates start to come out, and the conversion to a free gas. Now, the methane can be oxidized in time, but it takes anywhere from 20 to 100 years. But methane is a much more powerful greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide. And here's what I'm talking about. To give you perspective, this is the Arctic area here. This is the top of the globe, if you will. Here's the Yukon Territory, Canada, Alaska up in here, and here we have the Canadian areas, and then the Greenland regions. But over in here, and outlined in the red, is something called the ESAS, the East Siberian Arctic Shelf. And you think, well, what's the big deal about that? Well, this is an area that's been studied the most. This is the area in which is liberating and been measured quite a lot. And it's 4.5 times the size of the state of California, this right here. 4.5 times the size of California. And that's just one region that we're seeing. And how do I get rid of these frames on the right here? Do we just, there we go. You can see the temperature differences here in the Chez Tumas area, and the depths in meters, and then the temperatures begin to rise here as you climb in up from the depths. Same here in the Tixi area. Again, we're seeing these temperature rises coming up in these regions, and this is latitude and longitude. And there's another chart here of the methane releases here in the latitudes. Again, we're seeing these types of releases. This is what it looks like on a chart of methane. Ordinarily, it would be in some depth here, but we're seeing some liberation and concentrations being read in higher amounts. And so the extinction alert, again, this is something that was proposed years ago by Cambridge University's Arctic Methane Research, Emergency Research Council, is that they issued this some time ago. And that's something that's, again, been revised, because these flares of methane in Arctic waters have been measured the highest ever. This was 2019. Russian scientists studying the Arctic waters found the most powerful user ever methane jets shooting up from the seabed. It used to be kind of funny. You could set these things on light and get a little bit warm. You're up there and it's really cold. But now you have these thermokarstic lakes that's bubbling up of methane in there. The chief scientist aboard this vessel carrying 65 scientists on a 40-day research voyage told CNN via satellite phone that he found amounts of methane in the air over the East Siberian Sea up to 9 times the global average. So we're seeing that take place very rapidly. Let me go back one. And so they issued an extreme alert. Yeah, it's the Cambridge Methane Emergency Group of Cambridge University. Year 2020, it looks like we're already there. 2021, if you can see right here, this is where this methane is being liberated. And as far as they say, the vertical axis is a cutoff of 5 degrees Celsius, but yet 3 degrees will probably get us in a non-returnable area. But it's a disturbing kinds of prophecy here. The year 2100 is rather distant, but the question is, could this 1200 part per million CO2 equivalent tipping point be crossed earlier, say within this decade? That's what we have to be asking ourselves. And this is something we haven't even very, very rarely dealt with. And that's not to mention the species whom we are related to. If you seek a vision or a direction, you have to look, you really do need to look at native peoples and indigenous populations who have been trying to tell us for generations how to live on this planet, but we've not heard them at all. And it's heartbreaking. You know, these are cute little polar bears, I know, but they will eat you. That's what they do. They're meat eaters. They do prefer seals and sea lions and so forth, but this ecosystem has largely been disrupted with these blue water events in the Arctic Sea. And here's what it's doing. Here's what we're doing. We're still burning coal, and coal is the #1 process that we utilize for that generates all this carbon dioxide, not just from burning, but transport and disposal and the operations of these plants, the manufacture of parts and components and so forth, and the maintaining of this plant. And so refineries are the same way, petroleum refineries. Lots of energy has to go in order to get so much out. Our food supply, too, has been largely mass produced, creates a lot of methane out there. So here's something that's we're being faced with today. And you can look at it here, the materials utilized in a process, the design of a process, the production over its lifespan, the transport of materials, and then the use and disposal. We really need to assign, just like these hemp t-shirts, the same thing applies to that. And going on up to everything we do, all of our activities and all of our consumables really have to have an assignment of what it can, and it can have an offset. That, say we make a vehicle that has to have ferrous material. Well, there's a carbon offset, planting more trees, restoring prairies, doing other things that are not planet killing. Future of meat. What we have here is the energy use for beef. This one is sheep. This one is pork, poultry, and this is what I'm proposing. This is probably not very digestible right now to most of us, but it is it's laboratory or reactor-grown meat, which is actual real meat that our evolutionary history has adapted to in one way or another. Beef production with greenhouse gas emissions with the beef, sheep, pork, and poultry. But here's the production in settings of bioreactors, which I'll be showing. Land use is very slow, very low, and water use is very low comparatively to these other ways, traditional ways of raising meat. Cultured meat production, myoblasts in a petri dish. You're taking serum, the no-kill animal, no-kill. I've talked to vegans, vegetarians. They said they would try it, and the people that I have polled, that is fed into a porous collagen sphere, microspheres, and then in these canal little microtubes into a bioreactor, and you come out into a product like hamburger. There's steaks, but there's also fish that's involved. Parkway range management. Wow, this is something Kansas can really seize upon. When beef production, which is really the predominant industry on the prairies, begins to wane because of these industries coming on to where you can grow these locally in bioreactors. What are we going to do with this prairie? Well, here's a very good way to of sequestering carbon in the way it was before the settlers came. And here is a proposed project from the Yellowstone area. I think it should extend down into the Oklahoma and Texas, right up through these regions into the northwestern US, Alberta, and the Yukon into Alaska. These are migration patterns for large animals like the bison, the antelope, deer, all the associated, not just that, but the prairie grizzlies, the big cats and wolves, thereby creating an ecosystem in which took our prairies millions of years to to achieve its current status. And here's an example of some efforts going. I think this is in Canada, but you have some in Scandinavia, and I understand there's one in Oregon where the animals actually do cross interstate highways, and these could you imagine the tourism that this would bring and the monies that would be brought in for people to watch large herds certain times of year or over a gradual time to see these herds migrate across in these old ancient heritage migration patterns. And here's what they did too with these crossings is they found that before these crossings, you had very, 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 very low amounts of speciation here, insects and so forth that followed. Here with the migration patterns, you see a lot more speciation, a lot more biodiversity following along in this scenario. Yeah, so cellular aquaculture, seafood can also be and is being worked on right now to bring to the consumer. I know it's going to be hard to do this. If someone really wants to, they can go on a bison hunt or whatever with traditional tools and claim that one at a time. Here's another thing that's going on in major cities, and we need to implement that in our own neighborhoods, especially those with high rates of asthma, allergy, heart disease, cancer, is ultra low emission zones. Now, there's really no real way to enforce this other than just declaring it. So when you do have vehicles, say service vehicles come in, they can actually drive in on electricity, on battery power. And then if they have to go, say, you're going to a landfill or taking large, long hauls, they can switch back to diesel. But at least within those concentrated areas, you can reduce the amount of emissions. Polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, VOCs, and so forth, that has deleterious effects on the population. So that's what we're pushing for right now in the 67214 area to get that going with electric vehicle use and not restricting, no enforcement really, just as a request. But the ones that say we'll get the city buses that are all electric first, and school buses, which need to be electric, and so forth. And this is almost inconceivable, but you can understand how we can make tall buildings green, have its own production of food, and offset its carbon footprint in there. Some really good, nice things that are going on in other cities that understand what they need to do to adapt to having a sustainable ecosystem, a sustainable economy, and a sustainable way of life, and more makes it pleasant and less dreadful. I think this is Shanghai or Singapore or Seoul. I'm not sure which, but you can see how they endeavored to make green zones here, walking areas, water, that people feel connected to the land better, even at high population areas like this. And so polymers, biopolymers here, what we're doing with, this is levorotatory lactic acid from fermentation. You remove the, say, a packaged material, a jar, things we use every day but don't think about, jar lids. It's a poly lactic acid. When you put that in a compostable, this is municipal composting, enzymes and water can use, it's usually just heat, and heat can be generated on its own. You don't have to add anything fossil fuel wise. It's just anaerobic decomposition, like putting wet hay in a barn that heats up. And that can treated with bacteria, fungi, moisture, and heat. Again, turns back to a microorganism friendly environment in compost. So these kind of products, we really need to adapt and fight off those companies that want to keep business the same and keep contaminating our world with huge amounts of plastic every year. Organic recycling, biodegradable and compostable plastic products, bio waste bins, you put that, you can have, and we have that service here in Wichita now. Nudge, I think it's called, and a separate collection of our church does this. Separate collection of bio waste. They take that to their treatment areas, turn it into compost and plant fertilizer. You can utilize into a biorefinery if you want, and bioplastics granules, and start the process over again, closing the loop in there. And here's the old flow chart. I being an old refinery operator, International Union of Operating Engineers, that was my union. This is what we've made, but this is an old one because you see the products are coming here. This was for motor fuels and so forth. Now it's for plastic. Plastic is really these change these processes. They're trying to build another Formosa plant. They just completed one, I think, in Pennsylvania, $2.2 billion to create more plastic that is unsustainable and polluting. So let's get with the program. Let's figure this out. And mainly, it's just the political will. And right now, I only see the Green Party, but the Democratic Party's coming around. The Green Party is giving them the nudge, if you will, to go in this direction. And Native peoples have tried to tell us in there. So I'll close with Katahimita Pashna Akakayendatuk Ita Oba Niho. Why we ourselves are still trading for oil. And Katahimita Pashna Hakak Niho. This is Muskogean, by the way. Ita Toba Impa. Amasholi Hatak Api Homa Impa, which, why are we eating reservation food? Let's be who we really are. So, all right, I'll give it up. Thank you very much. Tribal Energy's coming on. Tribal Solar Acceleration Fund and powering self-determination amongst tribal groups. Sovereignty can be achieved. A lot of wind, a lot of solar going up. It's wide acceptance. So this is the indigenuity of cultural identity, to borrow a term from Haskell, Vice President of Academic Affairs. He wrote a book on the rise of red power, indigenuity of cultural identity. So anyway, thanks very much.
Thanks, Kent.
Hi, welcome.
Right. I think I'm trying to find my agenda again. I think we had, was that our last thing? Did we have anything else before opening it up before closing?
Right, the only thing we were going to do is talk about what people can do. And now, Janet, we've just got, well, I'm sorry, Doris, you were gone and you're back. Okay, so to Janet and Doris, what we see the Kansas Green Party needs to do is develop local small groups for every area that people are in. That's a hard ask during times of pandemic. We do have a Zoom account. Nick has the Zoom account, and you can schedule Zooms with people in your area who would like to meet on a monthly basis or quarterly basis to discuss Green Party activity in your geographical area. And then as a Kansas Green Party, we're going to divide the state into north, south, east, central, west, 6 parts, and the counties in those places. And then they'll give reports to so that nobody has to go to Kansas Green Party meetings all the time, just when you give reports about how you're growing your membership and anything that you want to report. So I think that is it now, Nick. We can conclude unless people have something they would like to say.
Well, it might just be, you know, what we've been reading in the headlines is that the Republican Party is going through apparently an identity crisis. You might tell folks that find themselves sitting around with family if that ever happens again, that they have to confront some weird uncle wearing a 6-shooter on his hip, really pissed off about what's being going on. Is what are you? Are you a Republican or are you a Democrat? Well, here's your chance to be a Green Party and sort of take the neutral stance. Everybody I talk to in the legislature kind of gives a grin, a smile, or maybe even a laugh, a chuckle. Oh, Green Party, well, you're no threat to us. You're not a Democrat. It just seems to take the edge off. And when you do that, their threat receivers go down. And when you start talking about things like the methane, carbon dioxide, and the oncoming electrification of power, not just power supply to your home, but electrification where you can manage it and to where you can have a control over the load and coming back to your own neighborhood. So these sort of things can happen. I'm just saying that here's an inroad. Here's an opportunity for us. Let's just don't let things slip away. Lobby, get up there. It's kind of fun when they open that up. Show up in person, and then get on these Zoom calls. We have one coming up. It's Senate Bill 24, to where the fossil fuel industry is added to with an ALEC bill, trying to force communities into, well, you can't control what comes into your community, the energy. I don't care if it's polluting. I don't care if it's unsustainable. You can't dictate what comes into your community. So we've got to stave that one off. Senate Bill 24, bad bill.
And what is that in the natural resources or?
Yeah, that's Climate and Energy Project. Dorothy Barnett sent that out. It's the attempt of fossil fuel to say that local governments and bodies cannot prescribe, homes built cannot have energy efficiency, cannot have solar panels necessarily. You cannot specify that must be that way. Or if someone wants to install a gas generator, gas turbine in a neighborhood that's already suffering from respiratory diseases, you cannot overrule that as a local governing body. Senate Bill 24.
Very interesting how I just pulled it up on the legislature website. Very interesting how they frame it in the short title. Prohibiting municipalities from imposing restrictions on customers' use of energy based upon source of energy. Well, that sounds really oh God. Well, I didn't know about that, Bill. Thanks for bringing that up. That's oh, it's a really short bill too.
It's pretty obvious that it is part and parcel of Evergy's attempt to make people who have solar collectors pay more.
Yeah.
And so Sierra Club took that to the Supreme Court and they said, no, you can't do that.
Yeah.
So Evergy has tried again and now they have a Senate bill. So the really interesting part is to look and see who advanced that bill, who are the senators and representatives that are in the pockets of it would be Evergy, and Evergy is wind in large part, and Black Hills is what my natural guess is. I don't know whether it is everywhere. Yeah, that is interesting.
Well, that's community and utilities. You know, I'll mention the ranking minority member on that committee is my Senator Marcy Francisco, who I know. So I don't know. Maybe I should talk to her about it. Yeah, who knows?
Yeah, stay on top of those, and it's fun, and then you just kind of get to know these characters up there, and visit their offices. Ty Masterton knows us. We're in his district, but now he is the
really?
he's the Speaker of the House, Senate
Senate President.
Yeah, President. Yeah.
They can be really weird. Okay, they're not this guy isn't in the legislature. And I've got a quick story about lobbying. I we were lobbying the same bill that we talked about earlier, the reducing the number of signatures bill. And this was in 2019. It was during the people's the Kansas People's Agenda event. And I was going around to the offices of all the members of these committees, and I went to Jim Dennings at that time was the Senate Majority Leader, and he's no longer in the Senate now. I went to his office to drop off a copy of the old bill because we were still trying to get it drafted as a bill for that session. And I ended up the next day, I started getting emails from my school where I got my master's degree because I provided my Fort Hays email address as a contact information because it was at the time it was the main email that I was using for various things. And apparently Jim Denning called the school to say that I was promoting myself as somebody who went to Fort Hays to try to garner favor with legislators. And I called my old boss from when I was a GTA at Fort Hays in the political science department to be like, there's nothing wrong with what I did. And so I contacted all the legislators again to give them a different email address. And it's just like, I don't know. That's just one of the weird experiences that I had once. They'll find some weird reason to say, hey, you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. Like, I don't know. Just thought that was an interesting experience to share.
Yeah, a lot of it's
It-
personality, and it's fun just to get to know the characters, the actors here. I accused, not accused, but I gave Leo Delperdang the distinction of having the funnest name to say, even though he disagrees with me on everything. And I always get a smile on his face. So
Hmm. Okay, well, is there anything else that anybody wants to discuss before we adjourn? If there's nothing else, I move we adjourn this meeting.
Second.
All right. Well, Janet, thanks for joining us today. Doris, as always, thank you. And everybody else, of course, thank you for everything you do. I think this was a good meeting, and our next meeting is Sunday, I think the 31st. So that's just a regular meeting. We don't have an agenda for that yet, but until then, thanks everybody. You'll be hearing from me.
Well, thank
All
you,
right.
Nick. It's good. Yeah, thanks.
All right.
Thanks. Mhm.
All right. Goodbye, everyone.
all right,
Okay.
bye.